and welcome to another edition of Kirklees Local Television's Weekly Wind-Up. My name's Kyle Warwick, and joining me on this week's programme is Callum Knight and Caleb Andrews, two Kirklees Local TV residents. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you.
On this week's programme, we're going to be talking about how young people receive news and media. Has this changed over the years, and how has that affected the way that young people assess the media and news that they do receive? And then we'll move on to the situation for people finding work after higher education. Has higher education lost some of its value, and are people becoming more dependent on apprenticeship schemes? So we're going to get straight into a discussion now. Firstly, young people, news and the media. In recent years, new media outlets have been cropping up, localised media like ourselves, internet-based news stations. I'll come to you first, Caleb. I'm wondering, how do you feel the way young people receive news specifically has changed?
Well, it's changed a lot since like the 1980s, because back then it was all newspapers and BBC television. But now you have all these social network websites cropping up, and a lot of newspapers such as Examiner post on Facebook all their news stories and everything else. So I think it's like one of the biggest mediums for young people of today to gain news information like that, just through Facebook and Twitter and things like that.
Do you think, Callum, do you feel that that's a reliable way for people to receive the news?
Yeah, I think that's down to your personal opinion. Personally, no. I think there's like we've discussed in previous weeks, social networking, you can say basically anything on it. It's not judged by anyone else, and you know, like I think also it's not just social networks that are diversifying news. Like you mentioned, in the 80s there was basically just the BBC. You know, even on normal TV, on Freeview TV, you've got like ITV and Channel 4 News do it, even Channel 5 do it. I mean, so it's diversifying news isn't a problem, but it's just the where it's coming from, the source, that's maybe up for discussion, really. Do
you feel that the variety of possibilities for receiving news has affected the way that young people assess news stories? I'm thinking in relation to, you might see a news story in a newspaper, but then the way that you accept that news story to be true. Caleb?
I'd say it depends which newspaper you're reading. If it's a tabloid newspaper, then obviously the stories are going to be really exaggerated and really weird to read for a lot of people. But like the Examiner newspaper, they tell the story as it is, really, and that obviously it affects how people read the news these days, and it can sway their opinion depending on what source it's coming from.
Callum, do you feel young people are a lot more aware of, like Caleb mentioned there, the way that tabloid papers manipulate stories and exaggerate things?
I think so, yeah. I think young people don't get enough credit for that as well. Out of experience, they tend to discard them and maybe just read them for the gossip, which I know is still technically news, but not for the more serious stories. What I will say though is that a lot of people have coined the term "I'll just Google it," so they might, you know, see it on the news, see it in a newspaper, and to double check it, they will go on the internet. And you know, once upon a time, it would have been the other way around.
Do you feel, Caleb, that we were talking about vetting a little bit, the sort of way that you look at something on social media and you're not necessarily sure of the source for it or something? Do you think this is a problem with internet media?
I think it's a massive problem, because when a lot of people read certain news stories on the internet, they tend to laugh at them, but if they read them in a newspaper or see them on BBC News, they have a different opinion of it. Yeah. Whereas the internet is full of funny things for people to laugh at, so people obviously give the stereotype of certain news stories as a funny thing to look at.
So some people as well, you know, the way that not just you receive your news, but media in general, so television programmes and things like that, do you think that's changed? like we were saying, it generally, your television was your television. Now that's changed completely with Netflix, and you can receive your television through your phone. So do you think that's had an effect on the way that young people maybe used to have to watch television programs with the family? Now they're not necessarily having to do that. Do you think that internet, that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, TV used to be a Friday night thing to sit down and watch a TV program with your family type thing, but now you can just watch anything wherever, because mobile devices, you can pretty much get hold of anything on the internet and just watch it as you're riding on a bus and all sorts of things.
It's not really, I don't see it as being a problem. When I was a kid, when I was sort of maybe between like 7 and 12, at that age where I wasn't allowed to stay out too late, Saturday nights tended to be watching things like Noel's House Party and the Generation Game, waiting for Match of the Day to come on. Whereas now I can watch things like House of Cards on Netflix, and actual quality television, and it's kind of totally changed the way that I watch television. I tend to watch the things that I want and then go down, and there might be something that I'll want to watch with my parents. So this Saturday I was watching telly in my room, Doctor Who came on, I went down and watched Doctor Who with my parents. Do you think that's sort of had an effect on like family life in general? Do you think people are... No?
Well, no, because I mean, it's still, like you said, you still have certain programs that you watch with your family every Saturday, even though I'm 20 years old. I don't have to say when I come in a night out anymore or anything like that, but I'll still watch Match of the Day with my dad on a Saturday night because I've always done that and we both like it and all that kind of stuff. So there are certain programs you'll still watch with your family, although when you're watching them, unless it's maybe like something like Match of the Day where you not have to concentrate as much, you can still have a discussion with them. If it's a drama or something like, or a soap or something, there's no talking anyway in the room, so you just sat in the room with your parents anyway. So it's not, I don't think it's got any effect on your family life as a collective. No. How do you feel about that?
I think
go on, sorry.
I think these days families operate completely differently to how they used to, and everybody inside a family is doing their own thing. It's like these days there's no such thing as the perfect nuclear family. So obviously everybody's going to be going off wherever, doing what they want, but there is, on occasion, like Callum was saying, everyone will get together and just watch a programme.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this topic. You can always have your input. You can do so by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can find us on Twitter, search @theweeklywindup. Thank you very much. Join us after this break. And welcome back to the Weekly Wind-Up. Joining me on this week's programme are Callum Knight and Caleb Andrews. We're going to go straight into the subject of the situation for people trying to find work after higher education, thinking about not just degree level higher education, but as well the situation for people leaving college. So we're going to look at how job roles have changed, but as well whether the value of higher level education has been watered down in recent years. So I'm going to come to you firstly, Callum, as a current degree level student. How do you feel the value of a degree has maybe changed over the past sort of 5-10 years?
I think people's conceptions of them might have been diluted, it tends to be, and no disrespect, it tends to be people that haven't had that education or have had a previous education in years gone by. Personally, from someone who is currently in the middle of their degree, I think they're still vital in society, as well as other vocational stuff that other people do they're as vital as well. It's they're both as important as each other. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, that type of thing. Degrees have their place still. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think that maybe the changing in opinion has got something to do with the way that every year when it comes round to to sort of, I mean, you saw it with the A-levels, it came around to A-level results time, and the big thing in the media, it seems every single year is, are exams getting easier? Are degrees getting easier? Do you think that feeds into it? It
definitely does, because it's not a fear-mongering thing, but the media have this tendency to focus on a negative. You know, there was a this year in A-level results, and they might not overall, they might have dropped slightly, but actually in terms of A-star results, they rose. So there's a number of people that are doing even better, yet they don't really get the recognition that they deserve. And yeah, it's this kind of this obsession with focusing on negative things, and you should just celebrate people.
Absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Kel?
Definitely, yeah. Like when I did my GCSEs, which wasn't too long ago, the exam board rose all of the mark limits. Like you had to get a higher mark to get a better grade, so they made them all harder. And they did the same with A-levels as well. I've just done my first year of college and I came out with 3 Bs. And like I worked incredibly hard for that, and I thought I was going to get a lot better. But like because they changed the mark schemes for everything, it made everything a lot harder. Which, like for me, I don't get where exams are getting easier. It's coming from.
Well, I would just say on that, getting 3 Bs in your first year of college is really good.
Absolutely.
I got a D and stuff like that. That's I've gone on to higher education. 3 Bs in your first year is really good. And
so would you say that is it? What I suppose I'm going to ask is it worth now going for a degree, or is that something that's maybe seen as a feeder onto maybe a master's degree that maybe people see as carrying the same value as a degree used to?
I'd say it was personal preference again. For me, it's not just the degree, it's going to the uni and having that experience, growing as a person, that kind of thing. It's not for everyone, and everyone knows that, and that's fine. But I think, people still want that experience and still want a degree. It's not a feed. I don't think it's a feeder into masters. People want to do that. People like studying. People like that kind of research and groundbreaking stuff, because that's what you end up doing. But for me personally, after my degree, I want to go and get a job. But I know a lot of people that want to do a master's. It's just down to you, and each thing has its own place and are equally as important.
Caleb, how do you see it? When you're finishing college, are you going to be looking to go to university?
I think going to uni and going to a job is all depends on what you're wanting to do when you leave college. For me personally, I don't see how it would benefit me going to uni, because I'm not the sort of person that would knuckle down that well at uni. For me personally, I prefer to jump straight into things, which is why I'm looking to go for an apprenticeship when I finish college, because personally I think that would be a better experience for me. But like, because I do media, it's a lot of it's practical, so I want to get in there and do it straight away. But for somebody studying medical sciences, they might want to go to uni and do more on it so they can get a degree and become a doctor.
Absolutely. So do you see apprenticeships as providing a positive entry point into the workplace then?
Yeah, definitely. Because usually when you do an apprenticeship, you're offered a work placement afterwards. So most companies do it for a 5 years work placement after an apprenticeship, and a lot of them just give you a job straight after. But like apprenticeships these days are like a rising thing. More and more people are going for them because they don't see the value in going to uni for studying for something that they might never get a job in.
It does kind of seem a set agenda of the current government to push apprenticeships to the fullest extent. Do you think that's a reflection on the number of people leaving university with degrees, Callum? Maybe. I think there's a lot of reasons why. It goes. I think personally it goes back to the rise in tuition fees, because a lot of people are being put off uni before they even got there. So then they have to have something else in place of that. And I think apprenticeships are fantastic. They allow people that
don't have the opportunity to go to uni to still do what they want to do, and they could be, you know, really good at that job, and it gives them a pathway in. But for me personally, I'll finish my degree in about this time next year, but then I'll go into an apprenticeship because that's the way. It's just a different pathway into what I want to do, and like I said before, it's different for every person. Apprenticeships are really good for just giving you that kind of little nudge into the industry, and then what I'd say, you mentioned they'll give you a placement after the apprenticeship. I think once you're in that apprenticeship, it's just down to you, and if you work hard and you're good at it, then you've got, you know, all the opportunities in the world to do what you want to do. But I think it's down to you then.
Absolutely. Do you think young people coming out of higher education now are taking stock of the fact that there are so many people leaving higher education, that it is now getting more and more to do with the amount that you're willing to put into getting into work? It's not just the qualifications behind you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of young people that are aware of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, like I know the value of a qualification, but I also know that on its own is just not good enough anymore. And I think, to be honest, you need to apply practical skills and stuff, and that should be the way it is. I mean, getting experience during a degree is really good. I don't think it should. The value of a qualification is still really good, and obviously I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think that. But I think, yeah, you do need your other experiences just to round you as a person, you know, to make you a better person. Yeah,
absolutely. Is that something you agree with, Caleb?
Yeah, definitely. Like, everybody should go out and live life, but they should manage it in a way where they can control what they're doing with their education and things. Like work experience is probably the most important thing you can do before you start your jobs. Like going through school and college and uni, you do 3 lots of work experience. That's all fine and well, but that's schools and college and uni making you go on those work experience placements. Whereas if you put yourself up to it and carry on doing work experience, it's a lot more beneficial, and companies recognise that a lot more for people these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So do you think that there's a certain level of satisfaction out of, like you were saying about getting work experience, but it kind of being forced on you? Do you think there's a lot more satisfaction out of getting your own work experience?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think if you get put on a placement, it means you're placed there. You don't really get that much of a choice as where you go. But if you go out looking for your own work experience, you're obviously going to be doing something that you want to do, and you're going to really enjoy it.
Do you agree with that, Colin?
Yeah, because I think, I mean, you touched on it there. If you do it by yourself, that's down to you, and you've achieved that yourself. I've had experience doing both. I don't think they do it in high schools anymore, but in year 10 we got put on work experience, and for a week I worked in a leisure centre because of a form I filled out on the internet. Don't get me wrong, I love sport, but I don't want to work in a leisure centre. It had kind of, the only experience I got from it was getting up and going to work each day.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, I thought, for that week you do feel good, like I'm doing something that I could apply after education. But doing other work experience, where it's me personally gone out, emailed people, gone for interviews, that kind of thing, to then get, it's just, there's something about it gives you a bit more self-confidence in your ability to do that job.
Well, and once again, this is all we've got time for on this topic, and that's the end of the programme, I'm afraid. Thank you very much to my guests for joining me today. It's been a very interesting discussion. As always, you can get in contact with the Weekly Wind-Up on by the usual means. You can do so by email, info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, or you can find us on Twitter by searching @the Weekly Wind-Up. I've been Kyle Warwick. Thank you very much. Join us next week when Pastor Napier will be in the presenting chair. Thank you. Goodbye.